Hi there, and welcome to another live edition of Mentor Minutes, where I take questions live over here on Facebook from leaders around the world, or you can email me at cm@cameronmorsey.com, private message me, or just hit up the comments after the live session is over, and I will get your question on the next episode of Mentor Minutes. So I start these up while we queue up some visitors with some of those questions that I received offline or that popped in afterwards, and I wanted to start today talking about training. So the question I received is, how can you help trainees not be scared off from the job? Is it the employees of the management team? And I know that communication is a key part of it. And I think you really hit on it right there. If you have a particularly difficult training environment, or your work environment is particularly stressful or complicated for whatever reason, it is more important to be able to communicate first and foremost the plan. Let the trainees know what the plan is for their training. You're going to be sitting with a person for a couple of days. You're going to be shadowing another person. You're going to be meeting with executives. Simply giving them an agenda for their 2 weeks is really the first step. The other thing is communication, not just of what's going on, but I want you to look back on your best practices. If you want to improve your first 2 weeks of training for new hires, the first thing to do is send an email out to the team and say, hey, what do you wish we would cover with new hires when they go through training? And what do you wish that we had covered when you went through new hire training? Ask the team. Yes, you can come up with a bunch of these ideas yourself, but you'll find a whole bunch of new ideas if you engage the team. So good to see everybody jumping on here. Appreciate that. So if you want to not scare people off from training, give them the agenda. Then handle some of those things that the people who have already been through have questions about or wish they had been included. But the other aspect of that is having a weekly sit down with the people as they come on board. So new hires that come in, I love one-on-one meetings with everybody that you have on your team. But new hires, it's great to have just a 10 or 15 minute meeting with you. It gives you a chance to collaborate with them and help them understand your priorities, what you find important, and to deal with any questions or concerns that they have. If you have turnover within your training, then you have an issue with how you're laying out your training and the people that you're hiring. A lot of that happens in explaining the job description correctly, so take a look at that as well. A lot of things to cover in regards to training, but those should help out in making your training a little bit more effective and not have people turn over while you're going through that training. So as we've had people jump online here, let me know down in the comment section where you're tuning in from. And if you have any questions on this Friday or Saturday, I guess, over there on the other side of the date line, then fire away in the comment section. We'll go ahead and get those queued up for you there. Next question I had offline was, what is the best way to organize time and priorities for employees? And also how to make them go for it. I love that last aspect of it as well. One of the best ways to get people's priorities in line and their time in line is, Brianna, so good to see you here in Vegas. A little cloudy today as I see it. But get them together as much as possible to discuss what everybody is working on. Just very briefly, this is where that whole agile process comes in the Scrum meetings. This is where people do stand-up meetings. It is 15 minutes well spent if you have a team of 10 people and you can just say, what are the top 3 things that you're working on today? That gives you as a leader an understanding of what everybody is working on. You get an idea of what the deliverables are going to be at the end of the day, how you might be able to help, and everybody else can see what everybody else is working on so you can get some of those synergies. That's one of the easiest ways to work on it. The other way to handle it, if you have a little bit more of a one-off environment or stand-ups don't work for you, is to bring the employee into the discussion of priorities. And that's where you get them to buy in as well. So when you lay out a new task for them to work on, throw out a deadline and say, well, what do you think of that deadline? What would prohibit you from meeting that? What are you working on right now? And so that's an ad hoc kind of way of being able to assess what they're working on and prioritize for them, but bring them in by saying, what do you think of that? Is that going to work? Or what do you need from me to make that happen? And so you bring in a dialogue. And when you bring that dialogue in, they get a little bit more ownership of it, a little bit more invested in it, and that helps them actually deliver on those priorities that you've set for them. So great questions offline here. The next one, and this one's an interesting one, and that is morale is low in my independent sales role among peers. Trying to stay positive, but many of the decisions are made at the executive level. And when you are completely detached from where the decisions are made, and this happens in a lot of different environments, a lot of corporate environments, a lot of nonprofit environments, where the decisions come down from on high and you really don't have a means for really making your voice heard. There's usually methods, but not necessarily effective ones. What I look for is what you can control. There are a number of things, this gets into almost a life principle sort of thing. There are a number of things you can't control in your job. And for some of us, that may be an enormous amount of what we do on a day in, day out basis. And it's important to grab that control where you can. How do you interact with the people that you interact with? You have some flexibility there. Yes, from on high, you may have to do this, this, and this, but there's a lot of wiggle room for how you engage with the person. So when you have low morale but less control, what I look for first and foremost is what can you control? And bring some of the focus on that. It's too easy for us to go down the negative spiral of focusing on what isn't right. And we end up losing sight of everything that is going right. I see this, I'll branch this out into, leaders in general. We're always hunting for the problems to fix. And that's good. We need to fix those problems. But it's important to also shine a light on all of the things that are going right in your operation. When I talk about celebrating successes and letting the team know about the good things that were going on, there's a 95+% of everything that happens in your operation works out really well. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in business or that organization wouldn't be successful. So look for those opportunities. And this brings me to the second part. So maybe the executives, maybe the decisions are coming down from on high and that's affecting morale. But that doesn't mean that you can't impact the peers that are around you. So if you're in a sales environment, recognize when somebody has a great sale. Shoot out, do a group email. Hey, shout out to Cameron for having a great sale with such and such. So you can be the person that kind of steps in and recognizes that success for other people, and that can hopefully help lift some of that morale within the team. So if you have any questions out there, I'm caught up online here, and I have a couple more questions to get to that I received offline. So if you have any, drop them down into the comment section. Anything at all, leadership and management, anything that's been bugging you this week that you couldn't get across the finish line, those are all great things for us to talk about because so many of these struggles are universal, whether you're in Australia, India, South Africa, Great Britain, or here in Las Vegas. Next one was, I have a team of 3 who don't adapt to new challenges and I don't know how to deal with them. And when we talk challenges, I'm going to phrase that with another CH word, and that is change. So much of challenges is very similar to change. The big issue with change management and getting your team to step up to challenges or step up to changes is that it is an unknown. We don't know what's going to happen in this case. And everybody from a human behavioral aspect has an issue with fear of the unknown. So what you want to do is you want to shine a light on it as much as possible. Now, in this case, this is a great case because you have a very finite number of people that you're dealing with. You're dealing with 3 people. What that allows you to do, and this wouldn't necessarily work for somebody who's overseeing 12 people, but if you're dealing with a very small team, you can lay out more of those steps. You can create the plan. So it isn't just giving them information on the challenge or on the change. Not just giving them the why is it important. These are all important to do, but you can also lay out the plan in a little bit greater detail. And when you lay out the next steps and you lay out the plan in greater detail, that kills all of that unknown and people are more apt to embrace something as opposed to shrink away from that thing that is unknown in them. And that would be one of my big recommendations. If you want people to step up to a challenge, lay out their courses of action a little bit better. And that's going to be something that's going to help them embrace it and not fear it because there won't be as many unknowns. It's more of a known. If you take step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is what the result is going to be. And that's huge as far as getting buy-in from your team. So if you're having an issue with challenges, Yes, give them as much information as possible. Give them the reason why and why whatever it is important. But also, if you can, lay out the plan, lay out the steps, and that tackles that unknown just a little bit more and allows them to move confidently through some of those things. Also, in regards to challenges, recognize up front, get in touch with the reality. Nobody changes, and these challenges don't happen overnight. You can't get from a million, or from 0 in sales to 1 million in sales without crossing 100,000 at some point. So there's usually some graduated steps that go with this. Recognize that up front so that people can recognize the progress that they're making down the line in regards to these things, and they're not just looking at how far away the eventual goal is. All of those things can help out. So again, if you have any questions, drop down into the comment section. Next one I received offline was, what advice do you have for a manager of mine who is having problems with her staff, who are not following through, and who are letting her down? So the advice that I would give, and you can oversee this, is I want you to start with one thing. Okay? Right now, there is a habit. There is a habit and a lack of accountability with this manager's staff. So to change a habit, it's often easiest to start small and then build from there. And so start with one thing, one new thing that's going on where people are not following through, and work with her on following up with the team. So give out what the expectation is in regards to this thing, what the deadline is in regards to this thing. Help her set up updates with the team in regards to this. You don't want her micromanaging, but you know what? We need this done by Friday. So on Wednesday, she's going to have a meeting with everybody to see how it's going. And then she's going to follow up Thursday and see if there's anything else that needs to be followed up on from that Wednesday meeting. Again, not a huge amount of micromanagement going on per se, but just updates. That's how you tackle that. But work on one small thing with her and her team. Then broaden it out to a second thing, and then a third thing. And so you're changing the habit. You're creating that kind of crack in the habit initially, and then you're just expanding on it week in, week out until the team builds a habit of accountability, and you're able to establish those correct habits in your manager where she's explaining why something is important. She's very clear on what the deadlines are. She's setting appropriate updates so she can monitor performance and recognize ahead of time whether things need to be adjusted or not. And the team is building that habit of being accountable and following through on those sorts of things. Start small, build from there, and you'll be able to build up that manager so that her team is supporting her. Shirley has our question. Next question is, how do you motivate employees when they are underpaid and don't get enough hours? You make the job satisfying and fun. I mean, that's the simple answer that's very complicated to put into place, and I recognize that, Shirley. So people stay, think about why people volunteer. Okay, and upper management expects a lot. I hear that. So think about reasons why people volunteer for particular organizations, because they believe in the mission of the organization, or it's just fun to volunteer. They get that sort of satisfaction out of it. So what I want you to do is get really in touch with why your organization exists. So I'll use an example. So I'm here in Vegas. I spent a dozen years working for the casinos. What is our purpose in casinos? It is to provide entertainment. It is to provide a break from everybody's day in, day out life so that they can go back fresh. You can come up with some creative reasons why your organization exists and why what you do is important. And then start talking about that. And people will respond to that with more motivation. Now, what you also want to do is you also want to make it fun to come to work. Everybody spends as many waking hours at work as they do away from work. So if you have a friend at work, there's studies that are done on this as far as motivation and satisfaction. Those people that have friends at work are vastly more apt to stick with a particular job and be more motivated in their work in general and be more productive. So find opportunities to put people together. Do team building exercises, Shirley. Do once a week. Go ahead and just Google this, team building exercises, and look for 5-minute exercises. There are a ton of them. Do them every single Friday, let's say, for the next 6 weeks. What's going to happen is you'll get a lot of rolling eyes initially on that first Friday. You'll get a few less rolling eyes the next week. And by the third week, everybody will have gotten something out of it at this point, and you'll start having more buy-in. It is fun. It is only 5 minutes, so it doesn't kill productivity or anything else. It helps bring the team together, and it helps form those friendships, those experiences. Have little things like potlucks. Have opportunities for people to express themselves as individuals. One that I did a lot in my career that it seems silly, but it's surprisingly effective, is just dress-up days with particular colors. It doesn't have to be sports jerseys. Hey, today is red day, everybody's going to dress, or tomorrow's red day, everybody's going to dress in red. You'd be surprised, people showed up in 50s poodle skirts and, this crazy outfit, and it just added a little bit of variety. But look to add meaning and to add fun. And that is something that is going to, that's why people volunteer. And that's why people will stay in particular jobs, even though they are low paying. Look for those simple things, that upper management that expects a lot. We're talking 5-minute team building activity, and then a whole bunch of things that don't affect the work, but are different ways of expressing themselves. And that's not going to be anything that they can come down on you too hard if they're happening to be, putting a lot of pressure on the particular organization. The last thing that I will mention on that is also communicating with the team. One of the biggest dissatisfiers, micromanagement is one of them, why people quit and leave jobs. The other one is that the boss doesn't listen to me. So make sure that, Shirley, you are running around and you are communicating with people. You're creating those opportunities for them to talk about their personal lives, to talk about their struggles in the job, to talk about how you can help them do their job better. If you are engaged as a boss, that's something else that will satisfy them. Yes, everybody is going to want more money, don't get me wrong, but you can cut down on your turnover by dealing with the meaning, dealing with the fun, and then just being a very communicative manager and an engaging manager, and that's something that's going to help out a lot for you. Great question, Shirley. Appreciate you tuning in again, too. Last question I took offline here, and if you have a question online, go ahead, drop down, and I'll handle it pretty much in real time here. I usually do one-on-one coaching, but there have been a lot of similar issues popping up, and I'm thinking about doing a team meeting. What do you think about that? First of all, I'm going to go ahead and just lay out a couple of things. I love the mix of team meetings and one-on-ones. Very important. What you need to realize in communication is people have different communication styles. Now, you know that some people prefer to talk on the phone. Some people prefer email. Some people prefer face-to-face communication. That's all great. But what you also need to recognize is that some of your employees want that one-on-one communication with you. They want to have that privacy. Other people feel more comfortable if they have their friends around them. They have a little bit of backup, and so they're more apt to give feedback in a team environment. And so when we talk about, and I hit on one-on-ones all the time because it's such a vital part of what you do as leadership and is such a benefit for you. I know you don't feel like you have the time, but it's something that saves you time in the long run, having those one-on-ones. And I talk about that a lot, but having those team meetings once a month, just once a month, team meetings is huge, where people can talk through things. This is actually, believe it or not, a team meeting is a team building experience in and of itself, because everybody is brought together in an environment that isn't necessarily on the job floor or at their desk, and they are able to talk through some ideas. You're able to update them on what's going on in the organization. Now, in regards to this specific question, about dealing with behavioral issues or problems that everybody's seeing in performance, I don't think it is necessarily a bad thing to be able to mix it up. And I'll kind of phrase that. I prefer for negative feedback and feedback in general to be one-to-one. But it also needs to be balanced, and it needs to be balanced positive, and it needs to be balanced negative. And sometimes that's difficult to strike that balance. So you can cut out one of the negatives by addressing it in a team environment. I do not recommend handing out punishment to the team for the infraction of a subset of individuals. That's absolutely not the case. However, if you are seeing something crop up and you need to change a procedure, I don't see an issue with mentioning that to the team. We've seen an increase in the number of incidents of this, and so what we're doing is we're putting in this new procedure. And this is why we think that's vital. It's not that we are adding something in or looking to punish everybody else who hasn't done this. Is because we continue to see this kind of growing. So to prohibit anybody from making that particular mistake, we're getting ahead of this and instituting this particular policy. So you can roll some of those things out in a team environment. I think it's part of the balancing act between always talking about negative things and problems and being able to talk about successes. It's a way to kind of hit that middle ground just a little bit where you're not beating up on somebody who is going through a streak of failures as opposed to a streak of successes. All right, so I am caught up on questions. So if you have a question, leadership and management, anything going into the weekend that you think you're going to be kind of noodling, thinking about in your head, drop it down into the comment section and I will get to it. I'll give you about 10 more seconds here as I kind of sign off. I love doing these sessions every single day. I'll be doing them throughout this weekend as well, so keep an eye out for it. And if you have questions, like I say, email me, cm@CameronMorsey.com, private message me on Facebook, or just drop down into the comments of YouTube or the podcast or here in Facebook, and I check those every time before I jump on air for the next episode. In the meantime, I hope everybody has a great rest of their Friday. For those of you who have already jumped over into Saturday, and I know there's a few of you that are out there, I hope your weekend's going well already, and I will talk to you all tomorrow. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye.